all of you to the Department of Communication, this event of the Department of Communication Diversity Series. Our speaker tonight comes to us from a varied journey through exercise science and football sports medicine at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, through careers in the restaurant business, sexual health and wellness industry, nonprofits, local government throughout the United States, around the world, and now back here in his home state where it began. Todd Carter has served as Chief Development Director for Hospitality House of Northwest North Carolina since 2011. In November 2021, Todd was elected to serve on the Boone Town Council. Todd is on the board of directors for the Ashe County Coalition for the Homeless, a founding member and past president of the Watauga Branch of the NAACP, and co-founder of the Watauga Back to School Festival. He has served on the advisory board and as a supervisor for the North Carolina Campus Compact AmeriCorps Vista program, and on the Community Advisory Committee for the Appalachian State Carnegie Foundation, and as a mentor in the Dale Tweedy Mentoring Program at the Appalachian State Transportation Insight Center for Entrepreneurship, on the Executive Planning Committee for both the Stone Soup Nonprofit Leadership Consortium and Out in the High Country Conference. He's the founder of the High Country LGBT Youth Alliance. But for those of us who know him, here's Todd.
So the notes say, warm up to the audience. So hello. I dressed appropriately today for all of us in the South. So my journey here, as Judy said, was very, was not a straight line. To say the least, I never pictured myself working in nonprofits. I had never worked for a nonprofit or in development ever before I started with Hospitality House. And I also, my major in school was sports medicine. So I never did anything with it when I graduated. Thought I had big dreams of working for an NFL team, and then I decided I didn't want to do that anymore. I was an athletic trainer for Carolina football team for 4 years and a 4-year letterman, and that's like I love Chapel Hill. I love Carolina. It's the only place I applied to go to school. The only place, thank God I got again. So I literally decided I don't know what I want to do. I'm just gonna move to Florida and work at a restaurant. But I wanted to work at the busiest restaurant in the world, which was the Hard Rock Cafe in Orlando, and it was just opening. I had never worked in a restaurant before in my life. I lied my way into an interview. Told them I wasn't leaving the building until somebody interviewed me. 45 minutes later, I had a job, and that set me off on a 6-year career traveling the United States, opening up restaurants as a corporate trainer. So I worked in corporate training for another couple of years with another company. Then that company closed down, the whole division shut down, and I could not find a job. So I sent out 300 resumes, talking to the students back there. I got three interviews, and I was so frustrated. I sat down and I said, if I could do anything in the world, what would it be? And I wrote down marketing, public relations, fundraising, work for a gay company. Since I've written that list, I've done all of those things. And it started with a gay company. I answered an ad in the back of a gay magazine for a sales job, customer service job for a small manufacturing company. That set me off on a 14-year career in sexual health and wellness, where I got to travel the world. I was recruited to another company, was making big bucks, and having a lot of fun. And then my boyfriend died by suicide in 2010. And I decided I needed to move back here to be close to my family, which was in Ashe County. And my sister is the one who bugged me to apply for this job in Hospitality House. I was preparing to go to Palm Springs for the weekend, but she kept blowing up my phone about, this is the perfect job, this is the perfect job. I was like, my plan was to come back and get my master's here and be a barista at Espresso News. That was my plan. And once I looked at the job, before I even interviewed, I knew I was taking the job because my boyfriend's passion was homelessness. And I had never honestly given two thoughts about it. I mean, I just knew that when we left a bar or a club, he would walk into 7-Eleven and he would buy every piece of pizza and every hot dog, and we would walk home handing out food. He volunteered every weekend, every other weekend at Venice Beach and Santa Monica homeless shelters. And one time after we were leaving our worship service at Agape, we went to the Harley Davidson store and he just had to buy a pair of boots for this guy that he saw at the homeless shelter, who the first time he saw him, he had nice shiny boots on. 9 months later, Bill could see his toes. So I knew that this was my God wink. I took the position and I've been there ever since. For the first 9 years, I lived in Ashe County, near my family, because it was cheap. And, Boone, life is not cheap. And, but all my activism and all the things I did were in Boone. I met Judy with NAACP. The things I was doing, I was working in Boone for my profession. I was an activist in Boone for the things that I cared about. Pandemic, 2020, commuting. From March 13th of 2020 to Mother's Day of that year, I worked 7 days a week along with Tina, the executive director, and we never had a day off. And I was spending 10, 12 hours at work every day, driving an hour and a half back and forth. So I desperately had to get moved here. And I did in November of 2020. And it was rough. And at one point, I thought, a year later, I think I'm gonna leave. Stuck in an apartment, just driving 3 minutes to work and back, and not having a community. And I hadn't had a community in Ashe County either. But I've been working on the things I'm passionate about. I started the LGBTQ Alliance. Well, that was no longer because of COVID. The work was really stressful. At one point, we had 70 people COVID positive at Hospitality House and couldn't get anybody to come help us. But a turning point happened. We had a fairly significant murder in our town, and it was traumatic, and officers lost their lives. And as they were planning the memorial, one of the things was everyone wear a red ribbon, and it was the AIDS ribbon, and nobody had given thought. I mean, this person died by gun violence. Nobody even thought to say, no, we shouldn't use that one. This is the international symbol of HIV and AIDS. So I got pissed and I wrote an op-ed, and it was called Why I Don't Feel Welcome in Boone. Now granted, I am a cisgender white gay man. I'm soaked in privilege, but I did not feel welcome here. And because of that, and the High Country Press, who published it, advertisers threatened they were going to never advertise with them again if they didn't pull down my op-ed. They were taking their business away. How dare I voice my opinion about what that meant? Well, then the next wave was people who were like, oh my God, we didn't think about that. Or, we're so sorry, but red was her favorite color. And I said, you wouldn't have done pink because you know it's breast cancer, right? But you thought, it's okay. You didn't even think about it because there was no context here that might be offensive to someone who survived the AIDS crisis and who's had friends die from AIDS and who's currently still living with HIV. It never occurred to anyone in this community that might be offensive, that there are people here that might find that offensive. So I started to pack my bags and move to Durham. Long conversations with my therapist about, should I just get the hell out of here and just go to Durham? I have lots of friends in Durham, lots of gay flags in Durham, lots of fun things in Durham. Love Durham. And it's 8 minutes from Chapel Hill. So, but in working through it, I decided I wanted to give Boone a chance outside of a pandemic, that I wanted to try and create community here for professionals, young professionals, middle-aged professionals. I want to try and create that community. But if I was going to stay, I had to do more. And you might think after what she read, are you crazy? So that's when I decided to run for town council. And I've started to create a community. And I had already started previously working to pass a non-discrimination ordinance. And as a private citizen, the way it went with the previous council, I was so pissed off, I decided to run for council because by God, we're getting a non-discrimination ordinance passed. And we just passed it last month. And it goes into effect June 1st. So that kind of answers 1 and 2. Part of that was that last June, I was bound and determined that Town of Boone was going to recognize June as Pride Month. It had never happened. Boone was 150 years old, never recognized Pride, never flown the Pride flag. We did it. Now it got stolen twice. I don't care. And this year it's going to be even better because we're going to have a non-discrimination ordinance going into effect on June 1st to kick off Pride Month. And organize a Pride March to go along with that. This year's is going to be even better. And we're going to continue building community. And at the heart of all this is not poor me, oh Todd, it's the kids. So in 2012, right after I had moved here, Amendment 1 was on the ballot in North Carolina. And I come from a very politically active family. My dad ran for Congress in 2008 against Virginia Fox. My dad took me canvassing when I was 8 years old. And we've always been my grandmother was a precinct chairwoman, which was never, not even a thing back then. But there we were in 2012. I had just been back to North Carolina and sitting there on the couch. My mom's on this side, my dad's on this side. We're watching the election returns like we always do. And I saw Amendment 1 and how it was just passing everywhere. And in Ashe County, where I was living at the time, it was 80 to 20. And I was like, so 80% of the people here don't think I deserve equality. My dad started crying, my mom started crying, I started crying. My dad's a football coach, by the way. And then I snapped out of it and said, here I am, a 40-year-old man crying with his parents, and somewhere there's a 14-year-old thinking about killing themselves in their bedroom. This can't stand. So it was in that moment that I decided to become a visible advocate. I decided to be a visible representation. You got to remember, I was living in Southern California, Laguna Beach. Gay. I can't tell you the last time I had a rainbow flag in my car or anything remotely related to sexuality and gender. Shortly thereafter, pulled up at the Ingalls in West Jefferson, and I'm bringing out my groceries. This lady gets out of her car, and she comes up, and I was like, oh God, here it goes. Because by this time, I had my rainbow flags, I had my, about George Bush, whatever, I had it all in there. No, it was a bomb, I'm just kidding. She came up and I was like, oh, here it goes. Because look, I've been called in the grocery store Bengals. I've been called taking a jog downtown in my Carolina basketball clothes. I've been called pumping gas within 6 months of I moved here. I'm like, where the hell did I move to? And that was in Boone at the Speedway. And I'm just sitting there pumping my gas, my own business, truck was. But this lady walks up to me and she's like, "Is this your car?" I say, "Yes." She's, "Can I just hug you?" She said, "My 16-year-old son is in there shopping right now, and he pulled up out of your car and said, look, mom, I'm not alone." And luckily, he had a supportive mom. And she went in to tell me, like, "Oh my gosh, she has a boyfriend, I'm so nervous." Like, all mom things, right? She had to pull him out of school. He was being homeschooled. But she said, "Thank you for a sticker on my car." Visibility matters. Representation matters. And if nothing else, if there is some kid that drives by and sees that gives them a little bit of relief. So that's what led to me starting the High Country Youth Alliance, was to do it for the kids. John Poblitz, I follow him, his paleo and his Facebook. I went to a retreat of his at the Art of Living Lab 2 years ago. And he explained the word. He said, "I need to know what twists your bowels." He said, the root word of compassion is bowel in Greek or Latin, one of those. And he said, "What twists your bowels?" And we all got up. There's just 30 of us, and we talked about what twisted our bowels, and it was queer youth. That's the hill I will die on. So whatever I can do, that's my commitment to doing for as long as I can do it. Oh, Judy. I'm screwed up. Okay, there we go. Okay. I've kind of touched on the activism and intersectionality, and I'll talk a little bit about my work at a hospitality house because, since I've been there, and it's no secret that homeless youth make up 40%, LGBTQ homeless youth make up 40% of homeless kids in America. And our shelter is a family center around youth, but we get kids that are 17, almost 18. We get 18 to 24-year-olds, which is a huge demographic of homelessness. And I would see queer people come in and they would seek me out and whisper. And then sometimes they would go back in the closet because of the pressures of being homeless and having a non-straight identity. 2 years ago, we were started a domestic violence, human trafficking, sexual assault program for homeless individuals and families. Our numbers of trans homeless individuals skyrocketed. The sheer number of transgender individuals who are being trafficked in our town in rural North Carolina is shocking. And more over the years, once people start to realize we're a safe space. We have a rainbow flag on our door. We talk about inclusion. We are, you stay where you identify. And there aren't a lot of shelters like that. There aren't a lot of places like that. We've had calls from other shelters that said, "Do you have room?" They can't stay here. Even though they had room. I'll never forget a DV shelter, which has since closed, not Oasis, in another county, called and said, "Well, we have a call." And they whispered on the phone. I can't figure out why they whispered on the phone. I said, "Well, we have a family. It's domestic violence, but it was a lesbian couple living, and the father of one of the couple was beating on his daughter. Familial domestic violence. Happens a lot. But the lady leaned into the phone, we said, sure, we're family, we'll make room, we've got it. But it's a wife and a wife. And they whispered into the phone, but it's a wife and a wife. We're like, we heard you the first time. What's the problem? So the things that we think we see or we think we might know aren't always accurate when it comes to our sexuality gender spectrum, or when it comes to people who are homeless. And there's a fairly significant queer homeless community in Boone. And it is, most recently, a guy came up to me and he said, oh gosh, you're Todd, I've been looking for you. And he said, can you help me get some resources, get me connected to a recovery? My boyfriend's at Johnson City and I have to be here for a while to get sober. But that's that kind of, I feel safe. And luckily we have a very queer staff at Hospitality House. We're very much the rainbow. So we try to, but people that come into our space, they've never experienced, they've always experienced discrimination. They've gone to a Salvation Army shelter and had to hide who they are. But once they were honest about it, had to leave. So providing that safe space, I guess, is a big nutshell, providing that safe space for anyone experiencing homelessness, anyone living in poverty, and anyone that identifies as something other than a straight white Christian is kind of part of my life's mission, I guess, is creating those spaces for people. I'm starting to be connected to a lot more queer faculty here. We had a queer happy hour at the saloon, and that's kind of gonna be a regular thing. And meeting great people and connecting and starting to find that community. And one of the things that's difficult for someone who's an activist, who is, I want to go, I want to build, I want to do. That's my nature. Sometimes it's nice to have a space to not do that. When I recognize that I don't have a place to go with like-minded people where I can just be queer. For the first few years I was here, it was suffocating, not just because I was living in Ashe County, but because every time I got invited to go out, I became the entertainment. It was me, well, tell me about being gay in California. And literally, and one person, we're the first gay person I've ever met. I said, it's 2016, read a book, watch a movie. I don't know, I'm not here for your entertainment. I'm here to just socialize. But being the only person, there's definitely something to be said for integration, but also having a space where you can be your true self. And those spaces are few and far between here. And again, as a cisgendered white man, I say that. So think about what that's like for someone who isn't white. Think about that for someone who is afraid to hold hands with their partner as they walk down the street. Think about that for a Black queer person. I mean, I knew someone who worked at the university, and early on when I got here, I was like, I have to leave. Recently, last year, there was someone, and I should know his name, world-renowned tuba player, was taught in the music department here. He's world-renowned, he's traveled the world, he's one of the greatest. He did a service for the UU but it was by Zoom. And in this very question and answer period, And he's Black and gay. And he said, if I had to get out, or I was never going to have a dating life or a social life. I still grapple with that. And what those opportunities are. But again, back to what twists my bowels, we got to make it better for the kids. When we were doing our hangouts before COVID for queer youth, I was shocked at the number of, the overwhelming majority of them were trans or non-binary, and they lived in poverty. You know, at the same time, I had an intern from the high school, Owen, who was like gay and white and in the band, and like, he didn't need to come to the hangouts. He was really popular. He went to the prom in a dress. That was fine. But everywhere there are kids that are struggling in silence, that need a safe space. And it's, if you pay attention to the news, it's only getting worse. I have friends in this community that have a transgender child are scared to death that her health care is going to be taken away. Because that's a bill that was filed in North Carolina today to strip transgender kids of access to health care in our state. So that twists my bowels even more. It makes me, want to do more, need to do more, need to make sure, and that all starts, I can't emphasize it enough, that all starts with representation and visibility. And when I was elected to town council, the first 2 calls I got from a 70-year-old lady who lived here almost her entire life, crying. She said, I finally feel like I'm being represented by my town. I finally feel seen. And my friend who has a transgendered boy said, he just wants to say thank you. This is awesome. I know that guy. And I'm nothing special. I'm just a loudmouth that wants to get shit done and rarely takes no for an answer. If it's something that's important to me and it's something that's going to impact the next generation. So that kids that grow up like me don't try to kill themselves like I did. That there is a way out from a toxic, upbringing of the religious right. Not my parents, it was church. My parents are proud flag wavers and gay pride marchers now. But coming here was hard on a different level because church was my trauma as a gay guy. In my job, hospitality house, lots of churches, I go and do lots of presentations. And when I would meet people, they would say, oh, nice to meet you. Where do you go to church? It was so uncomfortable. I finally just said, Oprah. Because that was true. Every Sunday I got up and watched Super Soul Sunday. So they're ready to go to church. Oprah. And they go, So working through the cultural differences and adjusting to finding a way to be a representative for the queer community in a way that's, I was not gonna, it was, the pride flag was going up, it was not gonna not happen. The NDO was gonna get passed, it was not gonna not happen. So that's what continues to drive my activism. People say, oh, you're a politician. I know, I'm an activist, really. And the other real reason that I ran, talking about intersectionality of my identity and my job, I have been working, this hospitality house, yes, we are a shelter, but we actually are a housing agency. We have 8 different housing programs. I felt like I pushed the ball up the hill as much as I could as a nonprofit executive and a professional with regards to housing. So that was my next big issue, like, okay, I have to find a way to get in a seat where I can make bigger decisions as it relates to funding and affordable housing. And how are we going to house? Because again, housing is a human right. What can I do to keep that going? And it was like, I need a bigger mouthpiece. I need a chair that I need to vote. I need to vote on this to really make change. So once I solve the housing crisis, I'm retiring and leaving. I'll be 90, but yes. No.
Yeah, good evening.
Hey.
I'm from your here. Just have a quick question. Who's your hero?
Jimmy Carter.
Okay.
Without a doubt. I campaigned for him when I was in 3rd grade. I created my own little flyers at my elementary school. I even I had a whole binder full of stuff that I collected, and I made little buttons. And so he's definitely my hero. And then my biggest, I don't know if I have clearly I've been doing a lot of, clearly Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera and overall trans sex workers and transgender people of color that survive in this world, they're my heroes today.
As a development officer, do you find that or have you tried to get grants, particularly when you utilize or at Hospitality House for the special programming? How hard is it to find funding for these?
So at Hospitality House, we have been blessed. Like we took advantage of the COVID money and we wrote grants. Like we wrote a grant for $1 million, and within 48 hours we got it to buy a building so we could increase our bed space. So we had it together enough that we knew what we were doing, and the state recognized us as the agency that did the most with what we got out of COVID funding. For the Youth Alliance, I've gotten a couple smaller grants. Again, we're teeny tiny, and I'm looking for people to join the board of directors. But it's becoming there are more and more foundations that are focused, particularly when it comes to queer youth. So they're out there. One of the things that I had to do this past year was we were dormant. I had to reestablish our 501c3 status so that we can pursue grants and such. Grants are, I will say grants are like anything else. A lot of people think, oh, look, there's a grant, I'm going to go apply. Grant is a relationship, just like you have a relationship with any other donor or funder. I've got a couple of relationships with some behavioral health grant funders, and that relationship has grown and grown over the last 3 years to where they get to know you get to know them. So getting that face time and with grant funders is just as important as it with donors.
Sure. And do you find that you mentioned you work with homeless youth. Do you work with youth in the foster care program?
So not officially. Unofficially, yes. I've got some friends that work at Crossmore, and we're really at Hospitality House. If someone leaves, we're really not good at saying goodbye. Like we stay connected to them and connected to their resources, and on a personal level, my sister and I are currently working with a couple of girls in foster care, but it's difficult, and I will say it is a gap. I get more and more calls now. Like until COVID, I went out and taught queer education to the cottage parents because they did not know how to deal with the kids who were saying they were queer or lesbian or pansexual. And so I would go out every semester and do in-service with the cottage parents to let them know, this is what's going on, this is what this means, this is how you have to act.
Can you explain what Crossdoor is?
Oh yeah, so the Crossdoor School is, Crossdoor Communities is a large campus in Linville for kids that, it's a group home type setting for kids who are in foster care. And I get calls. I mean, in the early days before there were queer peer educators at West Youth Network, like I was the go-to gay for any child that went to West Youth Network. Angels like Todd. And now there are so many kids identifying that's been integrated into their programs. But yeah. So when I was traveling the world and with a job, and it was in the sexual health and wellness field, it was kind of when I took this nonprofit job, the transference was like I was the guy that taught sex health seminars. I was the sex ed activist. I was the guy on stage in front of 600 women going, it's all about. That was me. What I learned is that being me is the best thing that I can do. And through all of my weird career that I've done, the thing that I've always gravitated towards was people. When I was working for Planet Hollywood, I was a corporate trainer, and what mattered to me was the people's experience. Was I training people to give people the best experience? I mean, took it a little further with sexual health and wellness business. And how was their experience? But those things that I would do between couples and talk to them about women, about their anatomy, and talk to them about communication as a couple, and they would call me and say, I want to thank you. I think you just saved my relationship. Just teaching people how to talk about sex. So it's the same. As far as, Berlin was a little tougher. I had to learn the language. I lost it. But the thing that I learned was it's okay to be myself. It's okay to be too much, as I've been called. It's okay to be loud when it's appropriate. That leaning into what you're doing matters, and whether that's teaching a woman about her clitoral legs, which happened a lot. I am gay, never had sex with a woman, but I know a lot. I'm an oversharer too. But it was about the person experience, and so that's how I take, whether it's, the thing that I love so much about being a nonprofit now, it was all about the people for me, but I was judged by the profit margins, and like we went from a $2 million company to an $8 million company, but that wasn't enough. Now success is measured in people. So it perfectly aligns with how I align. It's like, that's how I judge success, is the people experience. Are people's lives better? Did I leave it better than I did when I walked in? Well, the first time it happened, I went, what the just happened? Like, I hadn't heard that word in 20 years. So did I just really hear that? Did I just get called that? I mean, I'm just pumping gas at Speedway. So it took me back, and my answer a few years ago would have been different, but the way things are today, run and find a safe space. It's dangerous right now. And don't confront, find a safe space and find someone. If you have someone that you can talk to it, if you don't, go to your favorite place, do your favorite thing. Because before, I would have been up in their face but I can't tell a kid to do that because it's a really dangerous world for kids of all minorities right now. No matter sexuality, race, ethnicity, whatever, it's a dangerous place to live. And it just saddens me that we're going in reverse as quickly as we are. I will tell you this, that other than giving tours at hospitality houses, which I love doing that, which we have not been able to do since the pandemic. The thing that I miss the most about the pandemic was not being able to come and do things like this. Like, I've been so connected to App State since I got here in different levels. And I view this as such a tremendous resource, not only for what we're doing at Hospitality House, but I love teaching, and we have a very robust internship program in hospitality. It's one of my favorite things. I love going and talking to classes. I love working with professors on a service learning project. I love doing that part because, again, I view it as investing in future leaders, and that is important. And making sure that people can see that unconventional path, sports medicine, okay? And you can do all right because you just follow what drives you. And there are times in my life, not a single person, not even my parents, especially not my parents, were like, you can't take that job, you're not making enough money, you can't do that. And I leaned into what I believed, I leaned into my God winks. And it's a book, When God Winks. And I leaned into that trust in myself. I packed up my shit and moved across the country because that's what I wanted to do. After I graduated college, I just headed to California. Didn't know where I was going to live. All I knew was the second goal in my life after getting a degree and a letter jacket at Carolina was to live at the beach in California. So I packed up, just started driving down the Pacific Coast Highway. Me and two of my friends didn't know where we were going to live. We saw a rainbow flag, and I was like, oh, this is promising. And we kept going, and I saw basketball courts on the beach in Laguna Beach, and I said, we're living here. So we turned around and went right back to which is now closed, local gay bookstore, and the guy said, oh, just walk 2 doors over and talk to Donna and Marilyn. They're realtors, and they're lovely. And they found us a place to live. And we had no money. But for 6 years, I lived in a 2,400 square foot house overlooking the ocean. I had to lift my head off my pillow. Because I just followed, like, this is what we're doing. Gay flag basketball court, I'm done. It works out. I mean, it was hard, in your 20s making no money, but it works out. You keep moving forward with what twists your bowels and what you're passionate about. A lot of times people go into nonprofit work and it's the feel-good thing. It's so like, I want to do it because I care. Great. Learn business. If you want to write a grant, you better not make a C in English, or you're never going to write a good grant. That's the first question I ask is when I'm speaking to classes. It's always, oh, how do you write a grant? I said, what was your score in English? What was your grade in English? What did you score? Oh, C, nope, go back. You might as well give that up. And so I talk about the crutches of the English language and how to write a paper and R is what's word B and all that stuff. And I teach those things because it's like, if you don't have, look, I had a great education. So, I was able to transfer those skills, but my business, my time in the business world, particularly in PR and marketing and sales, absolutely inform my budgets, how I connect with donors, how I do a development plan. So many a nonprofit die from a big heart and no infrastructure, no substance. So they need to take a business course. They need to understand because nonprofits are a business. And so oftentimes this was even said to me by a former county commissioner, you're just a taker, not a maker. They don't see that we employ people, that we actually do pay payroll taxes, that we contribute to the economy. But if we weren't operating like a business with a big old budget, we would fail. So it can't just be pie in the sky. It's got to be, you got to doing the work that's not sexy. Judy and I had this discussion before when we were in NAACP about nobody wants to do the hard stuff. Everybody's just going to show up and march. But if you don't do the infrastructure, the ugly, not fun, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sitting here doing this, you're not going to make it. You got to have people willing to do the not sexy stuff. And that's where that passion comes in of, I like this so much, I'm so passionate about this, I have to do the shit that I hate if I'm going to be successful. And if you're not willing to do shit you hate, you probably never will make it. There's things about my job I just can't stand. But if I'm going to fulfill my plan and raise $1.5 million this year, I have to do the not fun stuff.
Yeah, I noticed you were editing a grant, sitting over
Yes.
here right before.
I was.
Right before you got up to speak. I thought you were working on your comments.
No.
You were editing a
I
grant.
was editing a grant that's due at midnight, so
I was gonna say, I cleaned the carpet, I worked for a nonprofit for 20 years. I cleaned a spot off the carpet before thunder came. Cause I didn't want to think poorly of it. Sometimes you get on your hands and knees and clean the spot off the carpet.
we just did that for a big grant funder that came last Friday, and I was doing the same thing. And that's an important lesson that we always pass along to our student interns too. There's not a thing in this building that I haven't done. I have wiped up blood, I've wiped up puke, I've resuscitated someone, I've swept the floor, I've picked up cigarettes. Again, the hard stuff. If you want to make a good impression on a grant funder, you got to clean the spot off the floor. That's what you got to do. So I try and instill that in students when they come to intern with us. And I will say the thing that I can guarantee you is you're going to get real world. That's all I can guarantee you. You get the real world. Beyond that, we'll talk about it as things happen. But I can guarantee you, you're going to have the most real world experience of your life. So, go to our website, hospice.org/intern, fill out an internship. We have our internship interview schedule. So part of what we do is we treat our internships like a job interview, because a lot of students, it's the first time may not have ever interviewed for a real job. And it's a 3-page interview with real questions. And so that is in itself a step to prepare them to be future leaders and to take that next step. So we interview them, we make our choices, we email them, and there's a time window for fall, spring, and summer. So yeah, and especially anyone who wants to come and work in public relations and marketing and from the communications department, because we don't ever get those really. Last summer was a banner year for me because I had 3 interns. And I do want to put a plug in too. So I talked about the town of Boone, we just passed the non-discrimination ordinance. Well, along with that came a Human Relations Commission. And we have 4 spots left. We just started, we had our 2nd meeting. Right now, we're a lot of white queer people. One black straight woman. And we have 4 slots, and we're trying to fill those with other ethnic, racial minorities. I mean, we got the queer thing covered, but we want different experiences. So, if you're interested, you can apply on the town's website. We have 4 slots open. Ashley. So just throwing that out there. So that what this commission will do, we actually will be trained by the North Carolina Human Relations Commission. And then once the non-discrimination ordinance is in effect on June 1st, this commission will be hearing complaints of discrimination from the community, and we will be the ones to mediate those. What we did in the town of Boone, we did not put any sort of, we did not make it we did not make it a punitive, as far as we did not make it like, oh, you're gonna get a ticket, or you're gonna get arrested, or oh, you're gonna get fined. That wasn't an option. We're one of 22 municipalities that have this ordinance, that similar ordinance, but we're going the route of mediation, and it's a wide ranging. It covers everything from traditional racial hairstyles like bantu knots and afros and cornrows and braids, and so you can't be denied a job because you have an afro. You can't be kicked out of your housing because you have a boyfriend and you're also a boy. Before that wasn't the case. So it's wide ranging, and it covers religious belief or religious non-belief. Also something very important to include, so that everyone can be on an equal ground. So I'm hoping, I'll tell you, we have had no backlash to this so far.
Good luck.
We've had nothing but positive emails and comments, and people who showed up to speak were very positive and encouraging, so I'm optimistic.
Thank you so much, Todd.